Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Write or Die Show. I'm your host, Randi-lee. On the show, we interview other writers and we talk about mental health from their personal journeys. If you have not already hit that like and subscribe button, go ahead, do that now so that you never miss an episode. So today with us, we have Robert P. French. Hello.
Hi, how are you, Randy?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm terrific. It's a
Excellent.
beautiful day here in Vancouver.
It's a beautiful day here in Niagara. So there you go.
Oh, great.
I was actually going to say, where are you from, visiting from? So there you go, Vancouver. Excellent. Another Canadian on the show.
Indeed. Oh, Canada.
Yeah, I always celebrate that just because it's so few and far between, but it's getting to be more common now, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah.
So enough about that. Tell me about you. Who is Robert P. French?
Whoa. Well, I was born very young. I, I was born in England, as you might tell from my accent, but I've been in Canada for 50 years now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So and I feel 100% Canadian. I don't feel English at all, except sometimes my sense of humor.
Okay. And maybe the accent.
Yeah. um, yeah, I was in the IT business for a long time, mainly software development, and I was in a company that ended up having to close its doors because we couldn't get our last round of financing. And I thought to myself, I've always wanted to write, and I've got this idea for a book in my head. And I started to write,
Oh.
and I was hooked from that moment on.
Isn't that the
Uh,
way it goes?
yeah, I know. When I was in my early 20s, I'd written a book of horror stories, but I had no idea how to get it published. I didn't even know that they had things like literary agents. I was very naive, and I still have that book, and it'll never be published. And I've still
Oh,
got
come
it.
on.
No, it's just the stories are pretty weak by today's standards, anyway.
Okay, well maybe it's like a young teen book then.
Oh, well, maybe I could rewrite it. Yeah, that's a
You
thought.
didn't think of that, did
I
you?
didn't. No,
Just
you're
shift
right.
the audience to something that needs a little bit watered down of that.
Yeah,
And then you're perfect. You're good to go.
yeah.
Well, you're
Okay.
welcome.
Thank you.
I expect a signed copy when it goes.
You will get one for sure.
Perfect.
Yeah. So anyway, I started writing, or what I thought was writing. I made the big mistake that I think lots of authors make, and that mistake was because I read voraciously. I'm always reading books. I assumed that because I read a lot, I would know how to write. Wow, wrong.
Oh, come on. Don't burst my bubble.
I had I started several books, three or four of them, that didn't ever come to anything because I kind of ran out of steam with the books, and then I was lucky to get an idea where I completed an entire book, and I sent it out to 70 to 100 agents and publishers and got
Wow.
back 70 responses, and they were all rejections. So,
Ouch.
ouch, yes. But I got really lucky. In Vancouver, we have a writers' conference. It's called the Surrey International Writers'
Oh,
Conference.
cool.
And it's a huge conference. It's one of the biggest in North America. And readers and writers from all over the world come to that conference. Anyway, I went to the conference thinking, clearly, I got all these rejections because I don't know how to write the letter to pitch my book. Because
Obviously.
heavens knows the book's wonderful, right? And the first day of the conference was what they call masterclass courses. And I took one in the morning and one in the afternoon. And by the end of the day, I was devastated
Oh no.
because I recognized that I didn't really know how to write. There were all these
Oh.
things that I just didn't know.
Oh, poop.
Indeed, that's exactly what I said, but maybe using slightly different wording.
Beep, 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 beep.
Exactly. Um, so I changed my plan then. Instead of taking courses on how to pitch a book, I changed to taking courses on how to actually write one.
Probably a good shift if you realize that, yeah,
It,
the book was, yeah.
yeah. Now, I got really lucky in that conference, and one of the people who was presenting was an editor.
Oh,
And I approached her after her session, and we had a chat, and she agreed to do an edit run or a review of the book that I'd written.
yeah.
And it was wonderful. She gave me a 37-page review, and it was absolutely wonderful.
Wow.
But it convinced me that the book itself was just not publishable, that there were all sorts of things wrong with it, things that I'd started to learn
Mm-hmm.
in the conference. So I
Hmm.
completely changed my shift. I took courses on writing. I read a ton of books on writing. And I was lucky that Lisa agreed to mentor me through my first book.
Oh, cool.
And so she and I worked on that, and really made a difference. And finally, I ended up with a book that was publishable.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Oh,
that
yeah.
was it. That was a
And
big moment. And
and
she
that
also,
brings you to the show.
that brings me to the show, exactly. Yeah.
Woo!
And when I finished the first book, it clearly was calling out to be a series. So Lisa also worked with me on the second book. And now there are seven Cal Rogan mysteries, and
7.
seven of
Damn.
them, yeah. And I'm working on the eighth, and I'm
Wow.
also working on a ninth book that will be when Cal has a daughter who currently is 12 years old,
Okay.
and I'm writing a book about her as a detective in the year
Oh.
2044.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so,
Cool.
so I'm allowing my tech geek out of his box
Woo! About time.
yeah, to
Okay.
predict what's going to happen by 2044. So
Interesting. And when 2044 comes and none of it happens, that's okay.
yes, that's fine.
Right? Because I saw some Facebook posts that George Jetson's supposed to be being born this year or something.
That's
And I'm
funny.
like, I think we're pretty far from his time yet. But
Yeah.
according to like the when the show says it's set and
Mm.
everything.
Yeah, it
Right?
was interesting. Isaac Asimov, who was a fabulous science fiction writer with a great vision, many of the things he talked about have actually come true.
Oh.
But one thing he wrote about in, I think it was the late 1940s, he wrote a book about a robot. And this was a child's care robot. And it
Oh.
was in the year 1975. So, so he missed robots by a few years.
Right? Yeah. Childcare robot. That'd be all right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So in fact, they now have healthcare robots in Japan.
Oh, cool. Some
Yeah.
Baymax going on. I like kids'
Mhm.
movies. All right, so let's talk about, I think your questionnaire said depression.
Yeah, yeah. I only actually realized that it was depression a couple of years ago when I finally got my rear in gear and went to talk to my doctor.
Yeah.
Um, but throughout my life, if I go back and think about times of my life when things went really wrong, I realized that I was actually suffering from depression at that time.
Isn't that interesting? So when I go on other shows and they ask me, how long have you had depression or whatever, and I say, well, how long have I had it or how long have I known I had it? Right? Because they're two
Exactly.
separate
Yeah.
answers.
Yeah,
Because at
absolutely.
I feel like the time when you first start experiencing it, you just think it's normal, at least for me, right? Like it's just how I am. I don't
Mhm.
know what it would be like to not be in this state right now. So
Hmm.
same, I didn't know that I had depression until years later. Then I look back and go, oh, yeah, that started then.
Hmm. Yeah.
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 So what brought you to going and getting help to then discover this?
Well, the depression had got to the point where I wasn't considering taking my own life. Uh, I have I have 5 children, and
Okay.
I could never do that to them.
Hmm.
I just that would be such a betrayal of them that I could never actually do that. But I was waking up in the morning wishing that I had the guts to do it. And I thought,
Okay.
this is not right.
Yeah.
So I picked up the phone and went to see my doctor, who I have or had, he's now retired. I had a fabulous doctor, and
Hmm.
we talked about it, and he said he recommended a prescription medication, and we played with the dosage over 3 or 4 weeks, and suddenly it clicked in and it worked.
Yeah.
And and I was depression free for uh, quite a while, until about 6 or 9 months ago. I recognized that I had a depression coming on, so I tailed off using that medication. So we restarted it, and it got the depression under control again. So
Good.
it really works for me. I know a lot of people have counseling and that works for them, but that's not a route for me. Just give me the drugs. So
I did a little
and
bit of both. So there you
yeah,
go.
yeah, that's good. But certainly for me the drugs worked, and um, so I've been pretty much depression free. Everyone has their good days and bad days, but
Yeah.
that's not so much depression
But you
as
haven't
having a
been
good.
in the slump for large amounts of time.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Good. So other than the drugs, which I always like to say this when medication is brought up to the audience, that medication is not a bad thing in and of itself. Medication is a bad thing if you're using that to kind of band-aid a problem, not to
Hmm.
use it to help with the problem, right?
Hmm.
And medication takes time. Like you said, it was 3 or 4 weeks before you guys had figured out the right dosage. It takes time. So don't just grab, the first prescription you're given and it doesn't work and go, oh, I give up.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's right. It takes time. Everybody's body mind chemistry is different. So that's why there's different kinds and different dosages. So just I always like to make sure I point out that it takes time, it takes patience and a
Hmm.
lot of talking with your doctor to make sure
Hmm.
that they have all the information they need to give you the right medical advice. So I
Yeah.
always like to put that in there because sometimes medication, there's some people that go, never take medication for that because it doesn't help you. And I'm like, oh, every day I do.
Hmm. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's very, very good advice. After my first doctor uh, retired, I got a new doctor, and when the second bout of medication came on, I talked to him, and he tried me on a different medication that just didn't work, and so
Mhm.
we switched back to the original one, and that worked. That worked just fine, and so I absolutely 100% agree with you. And for some people, medication is just not enough.
Exactly.
Um, uh, I know that my depression gets triggered when I have a big setback about something. Something goes badly wrong,
Hmm.
and that will trigger me feeling down. And if it persists, then I realize, this is a depression going on.
Hmm.
But other people have depression that is triggered by things from their past that
Yes.
need to be dealt with. other than just by medication.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We kind of have, a multifaceted approach depending on your own uniqueness, right? So,
Hmm.
for me, yeah, some of it are triggers from the past. And so I had to work through that. So yeah, I went to my psychologist. She was great. She taught me a bunch of stuff. We worked through some things. I cried a bunch. And so now I haven't had to go back to her in a while. I still take my medication. But I know that she's just a phone call away if something else comes up and triggers me and I go, "Oh, now I need to talk about that."
Yeah, that's really good. That puts you in a really good position because I think the best thing about going public with depression is that you don't try and hide anything. You prepare, you use the resources around you. My family know about it now. My family didn't know about it. I was really good at masking it.
Yes. Okay, let's talk about masking for a minute here
Yeah.
because you brought it up and it is such an important thing. And I actually write about it in my book, Embracing Me, is that part of my spiral in depression is I feel depressed. I don't want people to know I'm depressed because that makes me look weak and look broken. Again, this is my
Mhm.
brain. Um, and so then I try to mask it. But by masking it, I feel like I'm lying to everyone. So then I'm more depressed because I'm a horrible person by lying to everyone. And it's this vicious cycle on in my brain. And I it feels like I'm on a stinking like a merry-go-round, just round and round and
Mm.
round, and I just want to get off.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was funny that I realized that I was masking it well because when I first came public with this, it was on a podcast,
Okay.
and a lot of my friends saw it, and they said, "Bunch of people said, I didn't know you had depression. You've never seemed depressed to me." But
Yeah.
it's because I was just so good at masking it. Yeah, I was for a while I was an actor, and
Yeah.
so I used all my acting skills to mask the fact that really deep down I was just desperately depressed.
Yeah.
Um, and I think everybody uh, does that who has depression. They would
We
tend to
don't want to
mask it.
admit that there's something wrong with
I know,
us.
I know,
What you
I
talk
know.
about? I'm perfectly fine. I'm perfect. I'm
Yeah.
perfectly me is who I
That's
am.
right. Yeah, right.
And isn't it such a relief when you finally go, you know what? Screw it. I'm taking the mask off. People are gonna like me or they're gonna hate me, but I'm taking it off because I can't keep living this way.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, it is so amazing to
Mm.
feel finally like yourself. I know when
Yes.
I finally, so I would go to work and you know how everybody likes to go, hi, how are you?
Hmm.
Those two things always go together. It's never just hi, it's hi,
Yeah.
how are you?
Yeah.
And I finally started saying, and this is going back, I don't know, 8 years ago, maybe now. And I finally started saying, do you really want to know? Because I know that they're not actually saying how are you because they're curious. They're just saying how are you because it seems to be combined with the word hello.
Yes, that's right.
And most of the times people would say, yeah, I do. And by saying, do you want to know? It usually piques interest of like, ooh, what is going on here? Is there
Yeah.
some gossip or something? And so I would say, no, I'm not having a good day. I'm not feeling good today. Not in a physically sick way, but I'm not having a good day.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. That's
yeah.
good. Yeah, that's a huge breakthrough, isn't it? To be able
Oh,
to
it
say
was
that. Yeah.
amazing. I
Yeah.
finally was like, I'm being so honest now. And
Hmm.
it's so much easier to live your life honestly. Like
Oh, yes.
I cannot tell a freaking lie to save my life. Um, so it was so hard
Hmm.
to go out and say, yeah, I'm fine. Oh, I'm good. I'm good. And then a
Great.
little
Thanks. Yeah.
little piece of you dies every
Yeah.
single
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very good way of putting it. Yeah, a little piece of you dies every time you say, "Oh, I'm great, thanks. How are you?"
Yep. And in your mind, you're going, nope,
Uh,
nope, 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 nope.
and if they say, "Oh, yeah, I'm great," you think, "Oh my God, lucky devil."
Right? I know. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
what kind of cornflakes you have today? I want some.
I want some of that stuff. Yeah.
So, other than medication, what kind of coping strategies do you use?
Well, a few years ago, I discovered mindfulness meditation. And so I regularly meditate. And the nice thing about mindfulness meditation is, yeah, sure, you sit down and close your eyes and do it, but it's something that you can do at any time. And, I would just take literally a 15-second meditation break frequently throughout the day.
So, how do you do that in 15 seconds?
Well, you just become aware of your consciousness
Okay.
and you observe your consciousness and the sounds around you and there's feelings inside you, where those feelings physically manifest in you. For example, depression. Where if I'm depressed, I feel it halfway down to the left of my stomach. That's where I feel it. So just to take that 15 seconds to be aware of your own consciousness and what's going on in your mind, and the thoughts that are arising. I'm very interested in the subject of free will, and I'm in the camp of we do not have any form of libertarian free will.
Oh, that sounds like a different podcast, but oh.
Yeah, yeah, indeed, yeah. But because we don't have any control, for example, over the depression that arises. It's the chemistry of our brain is causing thoughts to arise that are part of the depression. So mindfulness meditation has been very helpful as well.
And when did you discover that? How long ago?
Ooh, must be 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay, so it's still fairly recently
Yeah,
overall. Okay.
yeah. I used to meditate way back. Uh, Back in the 70s, I was quite big into meditation, but it kind of drifted away, and that wasn't mindfulness meditation.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's very freeing.
Excellent. All right, so tell us, like, trying to process the words in my head. Sometimes that happens. So tell us so you already told us what made you go to seek therapy, but up until that point, you said you had been masking.
Mm-hmm.
And you said that when you finally reached out for help and you realized you had a label to this feeling of depression, you had a label
Mm-hmm.
there. And then you told us about how then you look back and you realize, oh, this happened a long time ago. How
Mm-hmm.
long ago, like when you look back, how long ago had you lived with it? Had you been masking
Oh, that's a good question.
it? See, that's why I had to process it.
Yeah, yeah. I could certainly uh, reach back to um, a time when I was about 20, and where I realized that I went through a period where I was really quite depressed. Um, and I can also think of times in my childhood when I was going to high school that I remember periods I hated school. I did really well at school, and I liked a lot of the subjects, but I just hated the fact that the bell rang and I had to stop what I was doing just because a bell rang. And it was a Catholic school, and the priests were very strict,
Right.
and so that was another reason to hate it. So I really hated school, but I recognized that there were times when I was at school that I was depressed. So I can trace it back quite a long way too.
So a long time. And I
Yeah.
don't think that's uncommon, especially in older generations, because it wasn't something that was talked about.
No,
The
no.
the younger generations, like my kids, it's in their face all the time. Um,
Hmm.
whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, that's another podcast.
Yes,
Um,
that's another long podcast.
yes, exactly. Um, but the information is now available to them, which is definitely a good thing,
Mm,
right? Um,
definitely.
it's sifting through to make sure that they're getting the best and most accurate information that I think can be sometimes tricky. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think that's pretty common to hear that, oh, I could trace it back for a long time before reaching out.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if anyone who feels that this what I'm feeling right now might be depression, then go see a doctor. That would be my suggestion. Maybe it's not depression,
Yeah, you don't
but
know.
that's right. But go see somebody else. Get somebody else's view on
Hmm.
it. And you're right. Uh, my generation. I don't know that I was even aware of the concept of depression as a medical condition until I was probably in my 30s or something.
Yeah. And again, I
So
don't think that's uncommon.
no, no, no. I'm with my generation. I'm pretty sure it isn't, and it certainly um, would be a more of a stigma with my generation. Um, people of my kids' generation, I have grandkids as well, and of their generation, they're all aware of it, and but it's always people of my own generation who learn about my depression are always kind of surprised by it
Yeah.
and almost shocked by it.
Yeah. I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have any, before we get into where to get your books, because we have a little bit talked about them already, but we're going to talk more about them. What last piece of advice, unsolicited advice, because I always tell people that you don't give others advice, but if you're listening to the podcast, you're kind of coming here for that. So what piece of advice would you give somebody who's listening right now, who's maybe going, huh, this whole conversation around masking, it's kind of resonating with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, if you feel you're masking depression, then you probably do have depression. And I love what you said. I just love that idea of saying, when people say, "Hi, how are you?" as people always do, that idea of, do you really want to know? Or just saying, to tell the truth, I'm not feeling that great today.
Yeah.
I think that that's a lovely strategy. I really like that.
Thank
And
you.
I will use that as well.
Yes, please
Um,
do.
Thank you. I appreciate it. But if you know enough to know that you're masking the depression, then you know enough that maybe you should go see your family doctor. Uh,
Yeah. And that is
the,
great unsolicited
yeah,
advice.
yeah, yeah. If anyone asked me for what to do, that's what I would tell them.
Perfect. I love that. That is the perfect answer, really. So tell us about what you've written. I know you talked about how kind of how you got into it, and that it was what, seven detective books. You're working on the eighth, and the ninth is about the daughter.
Yeah.
Are there any other ones that we need to be aware about?
No, it takes a lot of my energy to write two books at the
Right?
same
I
time.
I hear you. I do.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, it's interesting. I wrote a couple of books set in the future, but I never published them. Um,
okay.
I might at some point, but a lot of the ideas that came up from that are going into the new book about Cal's daughter.
Okay. Well, that works then. You're still getting to
Yeah.
take bits that you've already thought about into it.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. And
So
so where do people get these books?
Amazon is the best place to get the books,
Always.
and they're available in Kindle, as paperback, and as large print paperback.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, so Christmas is coming up, a good present for your grandma.
Exactly. Well, I have my copy and I will be reading that soon.
Great.
Next couple of weeks, I think it comes up on my list. I know I have to have like a list of guests and a list of books I'm reading and a list of I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh. But so I am looking forward to it, especially since I know a little bit more about you, about kind of how the process of getting to the story. I always like knowing the person before I read the book.
Yeah,
I used to
it's
read the
nice.
book first and then know the person. And I'm like, no, this is reverse for me. I want to know, I want to talk to you first, and then I want to read because sometimes for me, when I read the book, I can be like, oh, this is so Robert. Oh yeah. Right? Like sometimes it just clicks in there. And I find that so funny because there's not very many people that get that opportunity. So I feel
Mhm.
very lucky that I can do it that way.
Yeah, for sure. That's great.
Um, so they go to Amazon, they get your books, and where do they follow you to find out when number nine or number eight and number nine are coming out?
Well, there's several things. They can go to my website, which is robertpfrench.com. And in the contact section of the website, they can join my mailing list, and they can get preview copies of the of books and all sorts of other things. Plus, I send out a letter an email every couple of weeks.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and I'm on Facebook at Robert P. French Author, and on Twitter. Though I don't use Twitter a lot, but
Yeah, me
I'm
neither. I'm
at,
on it, but
yeah, exactly.
yeah,
That's me.
I
It's
got you.
at yeah, at Robert P. French on Twitter. So yeah.
Excellent. So everybody go follow Robert because obviously he's got stuff in the works that's coming out. And so in the meantime, while we're waiting, you go and read books 1 through 7.
Sounds like a brilliant idea.
Right? I
Yeah.
got you. I got you. Now, actually, speaking of that, because I have book 7, is it going to be confusing since I haven't read 1 through 6? No,
No, each book is a standalone.
beautiful.
Um, yeah, you won't know the characters and some of their backgrounds, but each book is a standalone. So
Excellent. I love
yeah,
that because sometimes, especially as a book reviewer, when somebody sends me a book, especially if it's say like a fantasy or something, and it's like, here's number 3, and I'm like, okay.
okay,
Like, because in a fantasy book, it is one story arc.
yes,
And
yes,
so if you only give me a piece of the pie, I'm kind of
hmm,
lost.
yes.
So that's good. So, okay, good. I won't be lost when I go and read
No,
it.
no. Well, I hope you
Excellent.
enjoy it. I really enjoyed writing Jailed. It's um, there's some lovely twists. I like twists in a book, and
Yes. Oh,
there,
good. Me too.
there's a lovely twist in Jailed. It's my favorite.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Great.
So of course, everybody go and check out rbwriting.ca because it will be posted in the blogs, the review, as well. I'll throw it up on Amazon for when you go and check it out. But go to my website. Go there. After, of course, going and following Robert on all of his stuff. So do you have any last words to share with the audience?
Um, yeah, that's a yeah. I would say that if you're somebody who often feels down, don't be afraid to ask yourself the question, um, is this depression? Um, I suspect that people find your podcast and video because they're feeling down, and it's if it is depression, it's something worth taking care of.
That is excellent final words.
Mhm.
So thank you again, Robert, so much for coming on the show. Remember, everybody, this is Robert P. French. And his links will be down in the description below, so be sure to check them out. So thank you so much for sharing with us.
Oh, thank you. I've really enjoyed it. It's always liberating to talk about depression with somebody who understands.
Yes, that's actually a whole other topic, I think, is it's so nice when the person responds in a way that you're like, oh, you get it, as
Hmm.
opposed to kind of talking to a wall, I guess.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we definitely get it here on the Write or Die show. So share these episodes with everybody because we get it here. We do. So we have a sponsor for today's episode. It is Taylor Smith Design. And I have been using the services for, I guess, almost over a year now. I use the do-it-yourself services, and it makes posting on my social media so much easier. Seriously. They have a user-friendly platform where I can schedule all of my posts for the whole year on multiple social sites at the same time. The best part about that is that I can create recurring posts, so I don't have to constantly redo the same thing, which works great when promoting my books. Plus, if you run multiple businesses like I do, since I'm my kid's momager, you can hook it up to multiple accounts. One price for all of your needs, and it saves me so much time. Depending on the level that you sign up for, it can do so much more than just that. I'm still trying to figure out some of the features that it offers. If you need an affordable solution for your social media needs, then go to getseensocial.ca, use code write or die to get your first month totally free. All right. Who doesn't like free? Remember, you want to go to getseensocial.ca and use the code write or die. Get that first month free. As always, thank you so much for the amazing guests that we have on the show. Be sure to check out their links down in the description below. If you want to support the channel, go ahead and check out our merch store. We've got some very cool things on there. That's my favorite. Sorry, I'm busy ending the stigma. But there's some other very cool designs. 10% of the proceeds always goes back to the Canadian Mental Health Association. Be sure to follow us on Facebook at RB Media because we have some great new shows coming up and you never want to miss any of those episodes. And remember, the only way to end the stigma of mental health is to speak openly and honestly. Bye.